So our game plan's pretty simple. We're going to create sort.java and just put all the methods there, just some boilerplate code, but we're not going to implement it yet, okay? Just so it compiles. Then we're going to implement testsort.java, which is actually going to make sure that the code works, which of course it won't yet. And then finally, we'll do sort.java, right? So let's kick it off by creating sort.java. So the sort class, right? It's supposed to have a number of methods. There's main, which is supposed to print the args in sorted order. And it has a couple of helper methods, which are public in this case. One called sort, lowercase sort, and we'll call this inputs. It doesn't really matter that it's called inputs versus args, but to me it just seems like nicer style. And this returns the inputs, returns the array of strings in sorted order, is non-destructive. We'll say it's nice to say. Okay. And then we'll have print, which we're not going to write in lecture, but as an exercise for you. Prints the array in the order given. Okay. And so if we try running this thing, we do javac sort.java, we get it compiles. All right. Except I have messed up, because now that I look at it, this should be returning an array of strings, so that should be string. Now we compile, and missing return statement. So often whenever you're creating these dummy files, you'll just do something like, I don't know, return inputs, or return null. I'm lazy, so I'll just return inputs for now, and we'll come back later and make it correct. Okay. Now comes test sort. Okay. So test sort. This class tests the sort class. All right. And in particular, I'm going to have a number of different tests. Maybe my first one will be called public static void test sort. And this tests the sort.sort method. Okay. And of course, main we'll just call test sort, and then later it'll call other tests once we write them. Okay. What should test sort look like? Well, if you looked at the project 0 or project 1 given test files, they often have patterns like the following. Right? I create an input, something like that. And maybe in this case, I'll go with, let's say, glorious pigs dream again, let's just say, right? And then we can put together the expected output after sorting, okay? So what should this be? Well, after glorious pigs dream again, if we sort those, again is first, then dream pigs glorious. Okay. Again, dream pigs glorious. It's poetic. And then we want to make sure that after we call sort, right? So we can do string actual sort.sort expected. Oh, sorry, input. Now we want to make sure that actual, at this point, after this code runs, you expect that actual should be expected, should be the same. So there's some things that one thing we might check, for example, if we wanted to be really exhaustive, is we could check and make sure if actual.length is not equal to expected.length, if somehow the sorting process, because who knows, right? This code could do anything. If actual.length is not equal to expected.length, well, in that case, we ought to warn the user and say length mismatch, okay? Then we could say system.out.println expected was of length expected.length. Then we could do system out blah blah blah. Actual was of length, actual.length. Okay, and so that's one part of our test. Okay, next up, maybe we need to make sure all the elements are right. So we could do for int I equals 0, I is less than expected.length, I plus equals 1. If expected I is, let's see, if not equals expected I, actual I, then system dot. All right, I mean, I'm getting bored. Okay, you're probably getting bored too. And as a programmer, you're gonna get bored at this point. And you know what else? It's a big pain to write all these tests. This is so much code. There could easily be bugs in this code, right? Once you start writing like 25 lines of code, you can't really trust your test code. What if maybe, who knows? There's all kinds of strange things that can happen here. So I'm gonna say that this is boring and error prone, and it seems like writing tests is a pain, okay? Well, the problem is that at this point, we're trying to reinvent the wheel, right? When you are buying a car, you do not insist on going out to a jungle and finding some rubber trees and extracting rubber and heating it and pouring it into molds and lacing it with steel belts so it holds together well and all that, right? You just go buy a wheel. Okay? Just so, we are not going to reinvent the wheel when we're writing tests. So this is, we are going into the jungle and collecting rubber plants, rubber trees. Okay, don't do this. We don't need to make our own wheel. Okay. Well, what kind of wheel do we have? What are we supposed to do? Okay. Well, one possibility, if I wanted to make things really nice, is to use a library like JUnit. Okay. So in the skeleton library, or in the skeleton repository, we've included a number of libraries that you'll be able to use. And in Lab 3B, you'll learn how to set these up. So we're going to be using something inside of this package, right? There's a bunch of class files inside of this so-called .jar file. And one of those classes is called org.junit.assert. Assert equals, assert array equals, and then we just do expected, actual. And all of that stuff we were trying to do down here is done by this one line of code, right? And don't worry too much about what this means yet. We'll go over this a little bit later in this lecture. But this code right here, it will call a function that looks a lot like this. Okay. So if we javac test sort.java, hopefully it compiles. It did. Wow. I didn't mess anything up. All right. And now if I run test sort, I get back some kind of interesting message, right? I get exception in thread, main arrays first different element 0. Okay. So it's comparing input and expected, and it prints us a nice message that said, I expected to see again at the front. But it turns out that actual had the word glorious at the front. Why is that? Well, of course, we just have this dummy method. Okay, so that's a little look at how testing can be nice. Now later, we'll see how to make not only our code look nicer, but how to make these error messages look nicer. But that is a first stab at writing a test.